Welcome everyone to Obinisa Talk. My name is Nikini Inaru,
And I'm
and
Nicole Iyamile, Novaton, Apetebi Iyamile.
so we've been on break,
Yes.
Semana Santa, which is a whole other conversation to begin with. But what's important is that we are back. What are we talking about today, Nicole?
Well, besides giving everyone all the buzz that they want to know about Caribbean and specifically Afro-Indigenous Caribbean spirituality, what we're going to talk about and focus on today is picking up where we left off last time. So last time we talked about Taino spirituality and Espiritismo. In this episode, we're going to continue talking about spirituality in the Caribbean, but the focus is going to be on 21 divisions, Sanse, and Haitian Vodou.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit out of the comfort zone this time.
We definitely are getting out of our comfort zone because you and I, we know people that practices these traditions. We have so much respect for these traditions because one of the goals that we initiated in this podcast is to let people know that all of these traditions are standalone in its own. But at the same time, they kind of have this sort of symbiotic relationship with each other. I was telling this to someone the other day that a symbiotic relationship is when there's two separate organisms that can live in the same environment and thrive in that environment. And that really is Caribbean spirituality. You have, whether it's 21 divisions, whether it's Santeria, whether it's Voodoo, whether it's Palo Mayombe, Espiritismo, you have all these practices that are existing in this Caribbean environment or in this Western environment now, because it now has expanded over here to the US and all of Latin America. And many of these practices have gone international, and they're still able to thrive with the other religious traditions that are in the same environment. So there's really no competition here. And that's something that you and I want to express. And I think it's very important to express that because in this sort of like societal atmosphere, there's always sometimes this tug of war between 21 divisions and Haitian Vodou. And you and I understand that the reasons being is entirely social political reasons.
Yes.
Especially with the internal struggle and sometimes not so easygoing relationship between what's going on in the island of Hispaniola, between Dominican Republic and Haiti. We all could see online a lot of the political things that go on, some of the things that were unfair that's gone on. We talk about it amongst ourselves as Latinos, as Caribbean people. We talk about these sort of socio-political things. And you and I know we've talked about in the past, Lee, is that Caribbean spirituality does connect with the religion or what's going on politically on these islands. So let me actually re-say that.
Yes.
Caribbean spirituality can be a reflection of what's happening societal wise and politically on an island or where it's located. Haitian Vodou is a prime example of that because the religion itself is rooted in the Haitian independence, especially when we look at the story of what kickstarted the Haitian independence and during that Haitian revolution. It was all centered around at core the Loire helpings, a specific Loire Dantor. So that's a fascinating story that we advise everyone to research and look into. If you happen to have friends who are part of a religious house that is connected to Haitian Vodou, talk to them about that story or ask them if they're willing to share that, first of all, because, every house in the Haitian tradition is different. But it's basically serving as an example of how the people and what's going on politically and what's going on as far as what they need in order to thrive, in order to get out of an oppressive system, they connected to their religion. And so that's very important, especially even nowadays. We connect to our spirits and the divinities that we work with in order to navigate this world, especially what's happening in political systems that could be a little bit oppressive to people.
I'm learning from you right now because this is all territory that has not called me. And I think that's important as well, because I know we get a lot of people that they're like, I don't know what to follow. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And this right here is the perfect example of go with what's calling you. One
Mhm.
would think that I would be super experienced in Haitian voodoo and 21 divisions because I'm half Dominican.
Mhm.
My mom is an immigrant from the island, and the fact of the matter is that it's never really called me. So I kept more so with everything on my paternal side, which is everything related to Puerto Rico. So right now, even you are teaching me about something that I'm not versed at all. But at the same time,
Mhm.
with what I am versed with, I am now learning that even though we are different Caribbean islands, we have a lot of similarities
Yes.
in the traditions and in the practices themselves in relation to resistance, in the relation of even just practicing. Because let's say Sanse's 21 divisions just called something different in a different island.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to see how everything meshes together, even across the board through the Caribbean.
Yeah. My conclusion as to why that is so is
Hmm.
because towards the last 200 years of the Atlantic slave trade,
Hmm.
the predominant enslaved people were coming from West Africa, and
Yes.
they were landing in not just the United States, they were landing a lot in the Caribbean and Latin America. So when we
Hmm.
look at Cuba, when we look at Puerto Rico, when we look at Trinidad, when we look at the island of Hispaniola, which consists of Dominican Republic and Haiti, when
Hmm.
we look throughout the Caribbean in general and Latin America, you find a lot of West African influence, whether it's from the
Hmm.
music, the food, and now the spirituality.
Yes.
And I think that's another core reason why we're finding similarities between Haitian voodoo, 21 Division Sanse, some of the aspects of Espiritismo, Cuban
Hmm.
Santeria Lukumi. It's all and Palo Mayombe, which is rooted in Congolese spirituality.
Hmm.
That's all rooted in West Africanism.
Yes.
It just may be that the influences are from the different tribes that had come with their beliefs and
Yes.
their nature spirits and divinities and or deities, however, a
Yes.
lot of universal spirits. They're now they're coming in and they're being met with what was already there, and it's becoming some sort of, the word that comes in mind for me right now is transmutation.
Hmm.
However, I don't want to say that it's too much like that, because it definitely is some form of evolution that has a base that's rooted in West Africanism, being met with the indigenous, and somehow in its environment, it's evolving. But it's still very much rooted in West Africanism.
Yes. Well, I mean, and that came to mind the video that both of us did post
Mm-hmm.
in regards to Epiditismo practices in Puerto Rico, of how it started from Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
that's
remember
like
that post.
that's like the perfect example. They here acknowledge that those practices came from
Mm-hmm.
Africa and they evolved, because that's the way I see it. I can't find anything that shows where it originated, or like in regard, like our yucayekes, we know that yucayekes were formed based on location
Mm-hmm.
of where you were located. I have not found anything that is literally just Sanses from this area, Epiritismos from this area. Everything is just meshed together. I mean, we do know that Luisa has, a lot of the Africans that descended from Africa, and they
Mm-hmm.
kind of communed there and stayed there and kept the traditions there. But they don't, with the amount of different practices that we have, we don't, it's not like Haiti and Dominican Republic, that it's Haiti, Dominican Republic.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any, everything is just meshed as a whole. And that's what Sanse is for us. It's really like a whole mesh of everything all together. Um, and you're right. It has African influence. It has Catholic influence. It has indigenous influence, and just a mishmash of everything all together for one greater cause, which is resistance.
Resistance, spiritual elevation,
Yes,
survival. When you
yes.
think about it, one of the things I try to invite people to when
Mm-hmm.
you're wanting to understand any form of Afro-Caribbean indigenous spiritual tradition
Mm-hmm.
is to understand history and to understand what it must have meant to those people 200 years ago, even 100 years ago. We
Yes.
could even, now that we're in 2023, yeah, we could say 100 years ago because now we're looking into the 1920s when things were finally cementing itself a little bit. Remember,
Yes.
these traditions that we're talking about on this podcast and that we're planning on bringing practitioners and initiates from these traditions to come in, we have to
Mm-hmm.
understand that these are traditions that have been formulated and have continue to grow and evolve with society and culture within the last
Mm-hmm.
200 plus years.
Yes. And this
Because
is why I say this and this. Sorry to cut you off with that one,
you're
but
good.
this is why I express resistance, because a lot of it was against the rules of colonialism at the time
Yes.
that they were practiced. So for me, before even spiritual elevation, it had a lot to do with faith. And I mean faith in the way of we gotta cling on to something to get out of this mess that we are in, you know, because of no cause of our own, and resistance.
Or
So
just
that's
and even just survive to have
e-
something to
exactly,
to stay rooted in.
exactly.
And I think once we have that level of empathy and putting ourselves into the shoes of those ancestors,
Hmm.
we could then appreciate practicing this now because it was off of their backs and their sacrifice that we in this postmodern world can
Hmm.
now have this to stand on. And so that is much gratitude that we can express. And then on that note, Lee and I will always, I want to throw this out there, we'll always be transparent when we are doing research or when we need to read off of our research, especially when we're going into areas that is not so much we're familiar with. So
Hmm.
that's why if you guys see us or note if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to notice we're going to read from our notes because we compiled research as much to the best as we can to want to
Oh yeah.
explain this. We even connected to people that we know, to our colleagues in these traditions. So
Yeah.
Lee, do you think why not we just, what do you think we should kick off with? 21 Division Sanse or Haitian Voodoo first?
So Haitian voodoo is the most complicated, and I think that Sanse and 21 divisions really go well together. So let's kick it off with the 21 divisions and Sanse.
Okay, and then we'll make the comparisons as far as some of the similarities with Haitian voodoo, etc.
Exactly,
All
exactly.
right.
So I'll begin, and of course, I got my sources from Sansista Brujo Luis. He's actually the best person to, in our Puerto Rican culture,
Mm-hmm.
he's the best person to get information from because he's been doing this for about 30, 40 years. And
Okay.
he is initiated in several different practices. And, a lot of his information is just accurate. He knows what he's doing. Um, and it's interesting because a lot of this stuff I knew, but a lot of this stuff I didn't know. And I'm just going to read off of what he put, that Sanse, Santerismo, and Puerto Rican Brujeria, and you add Espiritismo in there,
Mm-hmm.
is Puerto Rican Voodoo or Umbanda Boricua,
Oh,
which of course we'll get
nice.
into the Umbanda, we'll get into that on another episode. But the tradition of Sanse, also known as Puerto Rican voodoo is a blending of Mesa Blanca Espiritismo,
Mm-hmm.
Brujeria, Santerismo, folk Catholicism, Taino indigenous magic. Now, pay attention to that because it's not Taino indigenous spirituality, it's
Mm.
Taino indigenous magic. Spiritualism and the use of magic, we all know that are two different things. Um, and voodoo, just typical voodoo. And topics around this usually include Mesa Blanca, Los Muertos, working with Los Muertos, working with Los Santos, working with Los Misterios, the Comisiones, Los Siete Jefes, and then of course you have your altars, your prayers, your folklore, and it's all Puerto Rican based. So it's
Okay.
just, you know, all of that combined with magic itself is what Sanse is.
Mm-hmm.
Which for me, you tell me, but it sounds like 21 divisions to me, just in a different area.
Yeah, it pretty much, especially when they say misterios, because misterios is commonly used in Dominican voodoo, which is also
Mm-hmm.
known as 21 divisions. And the
Mm-hmm.
misterios are the Loa, which the Loa
Mm-hmm.
are are the nature spirits or divinities or deities that are worked with in Haitian voodoo. When people have
Mm-hmm.
asked me, how would I describe or the difference between 21 divisions, Dominican voodoo,
Mm-hmm.
and Haitian voodoo is like this. I feel, and this is based off of just having friends and knowing people that practice both. And also what was explained to me by an elder that I know who's an Olorisha, she's a Ialocha, she's an Orisha priestess that she is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when I say Ialocha, that means a person, a female that has birthed other Orishas, meaning that she's initiated the people. She's not
Okay.
only this person I know, she's also uh in 21 divisions. She's a practicing mambo, which is a female priestess. And that
Mm-hmm.
same term is used in 21 divisions, Dominican voodoo, as well as Haitian voodoo. Because in
Ah,
voodoo, the male priests are called ungans and the
okay.
female priests are called mambos. But it's the same from what I'm
Oh.
understanding from her and learned from her was that the term is pretty much used. Got to keep in mind 21 divisions, Dominican voodoo and Haitian voodoo are all on the same island, just separated by a border and
Yeah.
separated by a social identity between French Creole and then Spanish Creole. When you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
that's really what separates the island of Hispaniola is that it was split in half.
Yeah.
But pretty much, if it was all the same island and the same spirits landed on there, then of course, due to the different cultures arriving because of the split border, they're going to have different manifestations or ways of expressing and working with those spirits, but still keeping it the same. Because what I found, how I would describe it based off what I've been instructed was I was like, well, because when I was having this conversation before, when learning about 21 divisions years ago, was that, well, it
Mm-hmm.
seems to me that in Haitian voodoo, they work with the Lua at like a earth level, like direct, like really down in, I don't want to use the word dirty, but down core to its rawness, how it is. But then in 21 divisions in Dominican voodoo, it seems like the aspects of those Loa spirits that are heavenly is what gets tapped into. Because you're not saying that the
Mm.
syncretism isn't there in Haitian voodoo, because they still use some of the synchronistic Catholic images, but it's not. But of a friend of mine who's an Ungan, he's actually Belarusian. I have a friend that is Belarusian,
Oh.
so that's
Okay.
Eastern European. That's so
Mm-hmm.
Belarusian. That's Belarus. So that's above Ukraine, right there at the border with Russia. Which I know of a lot of people of Slavic background and Eastern European, sometimes even that Russian magic background, they find themselves practicing Haitian voodoo, which I find so fascinating and super amazing that Eastern Europeans have embraced an Afro-Caribbean indigenous tradition and have thrived in it. And they travel to Haiti. I've witnessed this. They travel to Haiti. They learn directly from those elders
That's
and they
interesting.
invest in that. No different than many people go to Cuba from different backgrounds and have
Or
invested in.
Africa.
Or
Or
Africa.
Africa.
If people are truly willing because they feel called to a practice, and then the spirits of those practice, the divinities say, yes, you are to be initiated because this is what we recognize that this is for you. Trust me, they're going to be accepting of it because right now it's all about preservation of the traditions when you think
Yes.
about it.
Yes.
And plus, we're now in a very international, global, like where globalization has truly taken over. But let me not digress. So basically, what I found is that in Haitian voodoo, it seems to be that the Luas are worked with directly. And then in 21 divisions, it's their sort of celestial or saint form that gets tapped into. But for the most part, now that we've read from what Puerto Rican voodoo is like, which is kind of like a very similar summary, I think when we read into Haitian voodoo, if we take your definition of Sanse and I take the compiled definition of Haitian voodoo that I have, I think that basically summarizes 21 divisions, which is part of the Dominican lands. So, of course, we have here that Haitian voodoo, also known as voodoo, but not to be confused with Louisiana voodoo, because those that we're going to tap in, those are two separate. And what separates them, of course, is what? The spirits of the land. The spirits in Louisiana that are native have a lot to influence in Louisiana voodoo, which does get influence from Haitian voodoo, but there's that element of it. There's that Louisiana element of it. Versus Haitian voodoo, which we're talking about, is what is going on in Haiti. That's what I'm talking about right here. So based off the summary I came up with, Haitian voodoo, also known as voodoo, is a religion that originated in Haiti sometime during the 17th, 18th century. It's basically has a combination of elements that are definitely West African. There's also Congolese and Catholic elements to it. Voodoo is a spiritual religion. It's a practice that centers around the worship of spirits called the Loa, who are believed to be the intermediaries between humans and the divine. That to me right there, from this write-up, is like, yo, they have the Loa. How's that any different than us in Lukumi? We have Orisha, which I've known people that practice Haitian voodoo that Orisha exists in Haitian voodoo. They're their own nation of spirits. There's different nations and different types of spirits. Now, to understand it, how's that any different from comisiones, the commissions, all the different categories, which in Lukumi, we call it Araurun. Araurun means heavenly spirits, spirits of the dead. So, and then if you go to Africa, in Isheshe, they have Egbe, heavenly mates. So, and there's different types of Egbe. So you see, guys, the universal truth that we're coming across here is that there's some level of universal truth. We could call it different names. They could be addressed differently. But the idea that there's spirits in this realm or divinities that are our intermediaries between the divine and us. And they help us in this time while we're incarnate. And we tap in and we work with them. And when we work with them by way of a bona fide tradition under the rules and regulations of those traditions, we're able to navigate living in this world. So Haitian voodoo's principles are very much similar to a lot of other Afro-Indigenous Caribbean spiritual principles. So of course, the Lua, they're associated with the natural elements as well. Of course, in voodoo ceremonies are held in outdoor spaces. They involve music and dance, offerings to the Lua, to the Loa, those spirits. So again, we're seeing already something that's across the board in a lot of West African or indigenous traditions already. Also, the thing about Haitian voodoo, of course, one of the reasons why, and I actually want to bring this up, is that, and this came up when I was on a TikTok live yesterday. One thing that really, I guess you could call it a pet peeve of mine, and I've been guilty of this in my youth, and I've even tried deconditioning and deprogramming, even when automatically people in society want to associate Black magic, they say it's voodoo or they say it's hoodoo. And I think that's completely erroneous for us to do, especially as we are trying to do our best to decolonize our mind, because this is a bona fide religion that deserves respect. And so when we're perceiving something as negative witchcraft, to even call it voodoo is a disrespect to the actual tradition.
Of voodoo.
Of voodoo, because it's not evil. No. Again, everything that happens bad in society is due to the people that are causing the harm. It's not so much that the religion or the spirits are the issue. It's the people that are the issue. And
The
so one
people
of the
that
things,
instill the fear.
yes, the fear. And then you have the influence of media, especially Western media, that has and colonized programming that's associated anything blackness as evil. This all stems back to the time of the enslavement period to force Africans to disconnect from their spirituality, because at the end of the day, their spirituality was powerful. Because if that was the case, if their spirituality wasn't powerful, then why you see all these kings and queens of Europe taking specific things out of Africa and putting it and using it on their thrones, and they did not perceive it as powerful, but they wanted to strip the African and the indigenous, let's even throw in the indigenous, anything away from their power. And so
that's a whole other
and
conversation
that's
to
a whole
have.
episode that we can go on a rant on. But the point I'm trying to make is this: I want to invite everyone that let's start putting a pause and eliminating altogether associating anything of that's negative with the term voodoo, because it's pretty disrespectful. It's also not.
It is.
It's disrespectful
It
because
is
it's not like that. The Luwa are. I've had the blessings of participating, or at least being in certain fiestas, certain parties, and seeing the Luwa come down. And I'm going to tell you something. My experience with those spirits has been nothing but healing. And you can talk to them as if they're your cousin or they're your brother or sister, because they're that lively, you know. And so, and they're here to heal people, to help people. Like I know people that they get baptized in 21 divisions, or they practice Haitian voodoo, and they see their lives end up for the better because of the fact that these spirits have come in to help them in their lives. So it's a beautiful, beautiful practice and tradition. And I think we all can take some time to start decolonizing our minds and associating anything negative with that term voodoo. And I will extend it even to Santeria, because the minute people hear that word Santeria, they associate it with something negative. They associate it with, oh, you guys are nothing but a bunch of chicken head cutters and animal sacrificers. And it's like, first of all, that's kind of rude and disrespectful. And second, it's not really truly showcasing what these practices are. All right, guys. So Lee is back. She had a little internet connection issue.
The joys of living in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
There you go.
So
as you were saying.
As what I was saying, I basically was saying and cemented the fact of how these negative stereotypes of Santeria and voodoo are really connected to colonized programming, that anything associated with blackness is evil, in order to strip the African of what really was their strength. Which then ties back to what? It ties back to what we were saying earlier tonight about how these spiritual traditions were truly the bedrock for people to get through their day-to-day oppressive living under enslavement.
Yeah. It was their faith. That's what kept them going. That's what kept them continuing on and holding on to the little bit that they had from where they came from, even down to even the indigenous of the Caribbean. This is all that they had to hold on and grasp onto the changes that they were, let's just be real, the changes that were forced upon them.
Yes. Which I think is amazing how, despite these changes that were forced on them, for some reason.
Are you there, Nicole?
I'm still here. Are you disconnecting again?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Lee's back. Are you back, Mama?
I'm back.
Yes. Island living.
Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
So basically,
I'm here. I'm here.
So basically what I was saying was that, picking up where you left off, when you were mentioning about how these ancestors that were under enslavement and existing under an oppressive state, how they had to make do with what was given them. And on top of that, they were forced to try to give up their beliefs. I wanted to bring up that despite the attempt of conversion, the environment of the Caribbean allowed for their beliefs to thrive. Now, this point is rooted in history, and this is a little history lesson that to understand why we have Haitian Vodou, 21 divisions, Lukumi, we have Ifa, we have Chango Baptiste, we have Apetebi. Well, the reason why we have these traditions existing harmoniously with Catholicism and allowing practitioners and initiates to not only practice what they practice indigenously and African wise, they could still be practicing Catholic, is rooted in the very nature of Catholicism versus Protestantism. And this is where we get into sociology. This is where we get into ethnohistory. You have to keep in mind this: the Catholic viewpoint at the time, during that era, is different from the Protestant viewpoint. Okay? The Catholic viewpoint is the Black man and the indigenous are savages with souls that need to be saved. The Protestant viewpoint is the Black man or the African and the indigenous are just savages with no souls. You see these two different viewpoints? And I'm saying this because these two different viewpoints from Christian ideology, but separate type of thinking and applying of Christian ideology is what cemented the conditions for us in the Caribbean and in Latin America to continue to still have our Afro-Indigenous roots. Why? Because yes, they like to say that the saints and the divinities and the spirits were able to hide behind the Catholic saints, which did help. But that tells us that there's something deeper going on. And now I'm really going to go deep in this. I'm going to go deep in what I'm about to say. I'm going deep, guys. I'm going in. And this is stuff that I've come to a conclusion on based off of knowledge that I get in connecting with my spirits, meditating, and then doing whatever research I can do. There's some sort of hidden or unspoken pact between our indigenous spirits and the Catholic saints. There was one day I was meditating, right? And this was years ago. And I was like, how can I explain the 7 African powers, for example? How can I explain the connection between these indigenous spirits and these African divinities to the Catholic saints? And then sometimes, when you get a light bulb, boop, oftentimes those are your own spirits giving you the answer, your spirituality giving it to you. They said, because we have a pact. We have an agreement. We don't have problems with the Catholic saints. The Catholic saints don't have problems with us. If anything, the Catholic saints wanted to rectify what their followers did to our followers. Because if balance has to exist in this world, if there has to be light and dark, good and evil, justice, punishment, there has to always be something to bring things back into balance. Duality, yes. So why should it should not be so foreign that the very Catholic saints and all these indigenous and divinities and spirits that are rooted in Africanism, that are rooted in Caribbean indigenous culture and spirituality, made some sort of spiritual accord behind the scenes. And that is where I bring up again the word symbiosis, or having a symbiotic relationship. I don't really subscribe to syncretism. I don't believe in syncretism, because the way I see it is this. Anaisa is Anaisa in 21 divisions. St. Anne is St. Anne. However, that there's an agreement between Anaisa and St. Anne, I do believe. El niño Atocha is el niño Atocha. El Egua is el Egua. But can there be an agreement between the two? Like a trade-off or something? And that these are spirits that all recognize and respect each other. And we see this within us, who are practitioners and initiates of different traditions based off of what? A lot of times our ancestry. alongside destiny. So I believe deeply, deeply believe that the word
Yes.
symbiosis or having a symbiotic relationship does exist, and it's some
Mm-hmm.
sort of unsaid, unspoken pact that connects back to Holy Week. Remember when we talked about how we took a break during Holy Week? How is it
Yes.
that as Orisha practitioners or as 21 divisions, people that are initiated and baptized in 21 divisions, how is it that people that practice Haitian voodoo, how is it that people that practice Palo Mayombe, we all take a break during Holy Week? If
Yeah.
not
Out of
for out of
respect.
respect for that unspoken and unsaid pact. Because I truly believe that
Exactly.
while our indigenous and African divinities are looking out for us, I do believe that we
Mm-hmm.
have the backing of the Catholic saints on account of making up for the fact, retribution of what their followers did to our ancestors. Everyone talks about what's the
I
word called?
never.
Is a R letter word that we talk about reparations, right? How we believe reparations and monetary
Mm-hmm.
reparations. Well, I consider this a spiritual reparations.
Interesting. I've never thought of it in that sense.
Why is it that we
That's
could
in
be at peace? We're not. A lot of us don't have any conflict with going to a Catholic church,
no.
and at the same time going home and doing what we got to do in our African and indigenous practice. We don't have that conflict. What if there's like some sort of spiritual piece on the back end that we're just not aware of that gives us that peace? And
That makes
that's
a
the
lot.
reparations, understanding that because of what our followers did, these saints will forever support your followers and initiates in order to make amends. And then as a symbol and as an example of that, we will have this sort of accord and peace and utilize each other in the Western society. Because still, when you practice, for example, Catholic folklore, you're working with those actual saints in the Catholic folklore tradition. But then again, once you want to go into connecting with the seven African powers, now you're connecting with the ancestors of those people who were the tribes, the enslaved ancestors who were part of the tribes whose beliefs make up Santeria.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with Haitian voodoo. Haitian voodoo, you have a lot of Haitian voodoo practitioners that are either Catholic or Orthodox Christians, and they still utilize those. They still go to church, but they're still working with the Loa. Same thing in 21 divisions. I think that's just
Yeah.
part of the beauty of Afro-Indigenous Caribbean spirituality is that symbiotic nature of it.
It's a harmony. There's a
Yes.
harmony in all of it.
And it's the type of harmony that we're hoping people here in the United States can emulate. Because oftentimes what we find here in Western society is you have to choose between one or the other, and you honestly don't have to. What we're asking is don't mix it, don't make a sancocho, but understand that you could be at peace being a Haitian voodoo practitioner and initiate. And if you got to go to the Catholic Church and go receive communion, you can go and do that, and there's no conflict. But I think that where we have an understanding of that, everyone else who's not within this culture or traditions may not have that one-up understanding. And that's where the resistance comes in on that end.
Well, they don't understand it either.
Mm-hmm. They don't understand it. But we can.
Yeah, they don't get it. We can get it, but it's either black or white, and you see what you're talking about lies within the gray area.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in the West don't understand the gray area.
They don't. But they also have to understand that the process of conversion from a Catholic point of view to a Protestant point of view was different. The Catholic point of view, the process of conversion was, all right, let's get them to rest on Sundays, allow them to have their social clubs, allow them that day, understand that, okay, let's make sure that we assign them things because, and let's also make it something generational. That was part of the Catholic process. The Protestant process was nothing like that. Why? Because the viewpoint of the Protestant was different back then from the Catholic. Remember, like I said earlier, the Protestant viewpoint of back then during that time period was these people don't even have souls. The Catholic viewpoint is these people have souls that need saving. So you see how just those different viewpoints created the situations that happened. And that's why
the
the
negativity.
negativity. And that's why for the most part, when people
Yeah.
ask, well, how come this couldn't be? How is it that in the Caribbean and Latin America, you guys got the message or you guys got the assignment despite being away from each other? Because how is it that pretty much the same things were happening at the same time in the Caribbean and Latin America, but it wasn't happening to the degree? I'm not saying that there wasn't influences or people in the States didn't make do. They made do with what they had, and they were able to create bona fide traditions from it. I'm not saying they weren't. But what I'm saying is that the level and the extent of the structure and the organization from a lot of these Caribbean Afro-Indigenous spiritual traditions is very sound and intact till this day. From Haitian Vodou to 21 divisions, Espiritismo, Sanse,
yes,
Urbana,
absolutely.
Candomblé, Lucumi, and Ifa Criollo. Or we're very sound in structure in our rules, in our rituals and regulations.
Absolutely.
Compared to the United States.
Of course. Absolutely.
And I know some people may feel a certain way, well, that's being biased. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to offend, but let's just call it as it is.
Yes.
What we've created in the Caribbean, what our ancestors created, was something very structured, and show how phenomenal they were able to do it under oppression and under enslavement.
Well, and also the fact of the matter is that it was always kept secretive in order to preserve.
Correct. And that's another conversation for another day, the level of secretiveness that may not be happening right now. And we can go on.
The level of gatekeeping, because everyone loves that word.
Yeah.
But, and they get mad at that word. But the fact of the matter is that the level of gatekeeping that our Caribbean people, I mean, it's incredible, because this is why all of these structures that we have are still standing. It was the level of gatekeeping. Gatekeeping and tradition.
I agree with that. There was this, and this goes back into what we've talked outside of the podcast about the difference between closed and restrictive. It all centers around the gatekeeping. And there's even other traditions that some people on the outside is like, why in the West you guys have to gatekeep? And I'm gonna be honest, Westerners, they could be on some F shit. Because let's look at Western society, which is built on the foundations of imperialism and colonization. To take, to control, to savage.
Yes.
Okay. Having no respect for already cultures and traditions to a level of extent. So if that's the foundation of Western society, you bet the ancestors and the pioneers of all these traditions had to gatekeep. In order for Westerners that coming in to have respect and revere it, there had to be a level of gatekeeping. It had to be there, and it continues to need to be there, because if not, a lot of people, what I'm noticing is people who, and we could be included, how we've had to deconstruct the way we've been influenced by Western society. That sort of idea of authority and entitlement. That does not exist in African and indigenous spirituality, that entitlement. Everyone has to pay their dues. So that level of entitlement to be able to say, well, why can't you share this? It's like, well, because you're not entitled to that knowledge. You got to go through a process. And I find that across the board. Across the board in all these traditions, the process is real.
Well, and and most people in the West, though, they want to bypass the whole process, and they just want to, just go steam straight ahead. And that's one of the main problems. We gatekeep, and we worked in community, and we were very self-aware that ever be students. You see, it wasn't, it was a way of life. And I think that's one of the big differences between then and now is that it was a way of life then. And now people are just more so, like I said, they want to bypass the whole thing. Did I lose you again?
You paused, you disconnected for a little bit,
Okay.
visually, but your audio
Mm-hmm.
was perfect and we can hear you.
Okay. Cool.
And I
Perfect.
love that you brought up that this is a way of life. One of my
Yes.
elders said it, that this is not really a religion, what we practice. We
Mm-hmm.
could call it religion, but when we also use the term tradition, that these are living, breathing traditions, be it Haitian Vodou, 21 divisions, Espiritismo, Taino spirituality, Candomblés, Lukumi, Ifa. When we're saying these are living traditions because we live this every day, this is part of our lifestyle. It's not being a fanatic. We're not saying that. We're not calling this fanaticism because that does exist. But what we're
No,
saying is
there's a difference
there's a difference.
in
But
being what is it?
a fanatic,
What's the word? But yes, being a fanatic, there's a huge difference, you know.
we factor in our lives, how and where we live based on it. Is it going to be conducive for us to practice our tradition? That's what I'm talking about as an example of how we live this. Is when to the point that this is a consideration as to where you live, the space you, how big your space is there room for what you have? Are you in an area that
Mm-hmm.
has access to nature, such as the woods, the river? Are you not too far from the ocean? When you have to
Mm-hmm.
factor these things in to live because of what you practice, that means you're living in that tradition. It's not just, oh, I can go to a church anywhere. No, not everyone has access to a river. So when that becomes a factor, that you want to have access to nature, this is where you're now at the point where, wow, you are really living this. When you're now thinking about how and where I'm going to live, it's going to help support my abilities to practice my tradition. That's living it. That's
Yeah.
being in it, breathing in it. Not saying everyone's like that. However, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
And on that note,
It makes perfect sense.
It does. But on that note, I think it's about a good time that we wrap up this evening. What do you think, Lee?
Yes, especially with my in Puerto Rico internet.
And that's okay. Yeah. We all understand it. Everyone who's on YouTube will catch it and they're not going to care. And I think everyone that's listening, they're not going to care.
I think they know. They know already.
Because we're real like that. They already know. So I'm going to put it up as it is. I'll type in the description box disclaimer. There was some internet connections issues, but that's okay. We're doing
You're
good.
All over again. No cooperation from the internet today.
Technology. So before you actually fully move out, let's go ahead.
Make sure before anything, guys, to please follow. Yes.
Follow. Like,
yes.
follow us
Make
on
sure
YouTube,
you follow
us on
subscribe to all. Yes.
Make it happen on Instagram.
Yes. And make sure you stay tuned. Yes. Yes. And yeah, until the next one. Because my internet right now is just going and dancing around.
Like doo, doo, doo. All right, guys.
Yes.
Until the next one, fam.